Hey guys, welcome to a real quick video. I wanted to do an update to my Hella light install. I had a few questions about the brightness of the lights, and I also wanted to show you some changes I made to the wiring so that if you are going to do this job yourself, you can be better prepared, and I think a better job of wiring it. And essentially what I did was I went down to the where the lights connect in the front, and I disconnected everything. I use those little butt connectors that I showed you in the first video. And when I was buttoning them up the second day, just kind of straightening things out, I inadvertently a couple times pulled those apart at the lights, and I thought, this is not going to work well. So I had never soldered anything before. I decided to go ahead and get a little soldering iron and watch some videos on how to solder. And so what I did was the connections at the lights, I soldered all those connections, and I used heat shrink and cleaned those all up, and I'll show you that in the video. And I think it may have helped with the brightness of the lights a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. I'll let you guys see what you think. And as to the brightness of the lights, when I got these, I was never really expecting a real white kind of LED light look. And I have to say, honestly, I think the stock limited headlights, especially the high beams, are fantastic. They work really well. And from the new video that I shot of me driving around the neighborhood, I think you'll see that these lights actually do help a little bit. They're still not, you're not going to be overwhelmed like, wow, those are incredibly bright, but they do fill in some gaps, and I think they will be helpful in some off-road situations. If nothing else, I like the way they look. I like the round, kind of old school rally look. And that was kind of the purpose for the money. If down the road, if I really find that I need significantly bright lights off-road, I'll pick up some LEDs. They're just a little bit more expensive. One of the other things I did was I initially wired it so that the power was to the switch at all times, so that even when the car was off, you could flick the lights on. I learned real quick that I was going to leave those on accident, and I really didn't want that. So I actually used a fuse tap, and I'll show you that as well. And I used an accessory location in the fuse box that's only hot when the ignition is on. So you can still inadvertently turn them on while the car's on, and if you have the covers over the lights, you could melt your covers. Like hopefully, if you watched the whole video last time, I mentioned at the end that I inadvertently turned them on the way home from Costco. Yeah, still not sure how I did that, but I melted my covers. So you can still do that, but at least you cannot leave these lights on and walk away from your car and come back to a dead battery. So I'll show you how I did the fuse tap, and hopefully this will be helpful for you guys down the road. So let's take a look at the wiring, and as always, guys, thanks for watching. And I'm still working on the 10,000 mile update video. That's going to hopefully come out in the next week, even though I'm really at like 10,200 miles already. So let's check it out. So let's talk real quick first about how I changed the wiring and the power to the switch. If you remember from the first video, the switch is coming into the compartment here. Blue ground, yellow goes to the relay, and green brings the power to the switch itself. And initially I had it directly wired to the battery along with the red power switch that powers the relay and the lights. There's nothing necessarily wrong with doing it that way. The big problem is you can turn these lights on, and if you're not paying attention, you can walk away and leave your lights on and kill your battery. And knowing me, that is something I would definitely do. So I decided to figure out a way to wire them so that they only come on when the ignition is on. And that's what's behind what's called a fuse tap. At least that's what I found that people call them. And that is this little plug right here, and that red little pigtail. And then you can see I have it heat shrinked to the green wire that comes over to the switch. So basically now I just have the green wire goes to the switch and then comes up here and is attached to this fuse tap. And so the power comes from the fuse box only when the ignition is on. So I cannot walk away and leave my lights on anymore. And that's really the big change as far as it goes for the switch. The way that these little fuse taps work is basically you choose a fuse position that is only on when the ignition is on. You pull that fuse, it plugs in to the top of the fuse tap, and then there's also a small protective fuse that you plug in. There's 2 slots on top of them. In this case, I really don't need that protective fuse because there's already one on the green wire from the Hella setup. And that's basically it. That's the change I made here. So let's go on and talk about the other changes I made to the wiring to the lights themselves. I forgot to mention, as you probably saw earlier, I have not found a permanent spot for the switch yet, so it's still hanging here tucked up underneath. So basically what happened down here was I took all these connections apart. So if you remember, each light has a black wire and a blue wire. Black is power, blue is ground. And then what I did in the first video is I actually used those butt connectors and connected the black wire that comes down from the relay to each light. And then I combined the grounds together and just ran one ground wire up. But as you can see, well actually you can't see, but I took them all apart and I soldered all the wires together and I used heat shrink on them for better and safer connections. And then I just cleaned this whole area up using the wire loom and ran the wires up here like I did before. Everything inside is basically the same except for there's only the red wire going to the battery and no longer needing the green wire to the battery. But other than that, the big change was that I soldered all these wires, and I think they're much safer, especially for all the puddles and stuff that I'll be going through. I think it was a wise move, and I would suggest using solder as well if you guys are going to do this. Let's take a quick look at the lights kind of in and around the neighborhood. So here you can see that's with the driving lights only. And when they're pressed up against something close, they actually look fairly bright. They're not a very white light, they're more of a yellow light. And I think having the camera outside and not seeing it through the windshield has helped a little bit. But as we cruise around the neighborhood, you can see, I mean, again, they're not massively bright, but you could certainly drive with them on their own. No question about it. Here you can see that they're bright when they hit an object. So as we get around the corner here, I'm going to flick on, that's the low beams with the hella lights. And I think the big thing is you'll notice as I turn them on and off up here, you just see the hella lights just kind of fill in some areas that you normally wouldn't have with just the standard low beams on. So that's just low beams. And there's the hellas with the lows. And I think that gives you an idea of what they do. Again, they're not super white, not massively bright, but they are actually very helpful. And I think they do look a little bit brighter than they did from the first video. So once again, these are not as bright, nearly as bright as LEDs. And that wasn't really my intention. I wasn't trying to get super, super bright lights because I really feel like the stock lights are pretty excellent. But I think these will be helpful. So again, low beams, and that's with the fogs, the hellas, and the low beams. Fogs off. And again, hellas on and off. Just wanted to show you one more thing, and that was a drive-by. I put the other GoPro on my mailbox and drove by it just to give you an idea what the lights look like. And then I'm going to show you what they look like also about 25 yards away from the car when I turn the hellas on by themselves. And again, 25 yards away, that's the hellas on by themselves. So they're definitely bright. I mean, you can see them. They're not phenomenal by any means, but I am very happy with them, and I think it's going to be a nice addition to the car, especially off-road. All right, guys, well, that's pretty much it. I wanted to give you a quick update on that wiring stuff and then on the way the lights look, and we will see you soon for the 10K update.